Where did British MultiCam or MultiTerrain Pattern come from? Welcome to the first video in a new series on AP's YouTube channel, Camo History. In this series, we'll delve into the history, use case, and development processes used to create various camouflage patterns. Today, we're going to discuss the British Army's current issue camouflage, MTP.
MTP stands for My Tiny Pecker.
Known officially as MultiTerrain Pattern, it was developed in collaboration with the well-known American company Cry Precision. It's basically a clone of MultiCam, but with a few elements of the old school DPM pattern mixed in. Before we get into the meat and potatoes of the video, I have to ask a favor. Make sure that you're subscribed, like the video, and make a comment if you think MultiCam is gay. Let's start off with a brief overview of the history of camouflage as it has been used by British people. It's thought that some of the very first camouflage clothing ever invented was actually invented in Scotland, with the ghillie suit being used as a type of camouflage worn during hunts by noblemen and the like. Maybe we'll have a video on that in the future. It's a pretty interesting topic. I didn't know about that until I started scripting this video. Pretty cool. All that notwithstanding though, the first British military standard issue camouflage was adopted in the 1960s under the name of Disruptive Pattern Material, or DPM. DPM was a green-dominant woodland camouflage intended for use in Western Europe, which at the time was where the British Army was operating for the most part, thinking they might have to fight the Soviets within the next couple decades, and that pattern performed extremely well in that environment. The Brits went through several uniform variations using different colorations of DPM all the way up until 2010, including a two-tone desert version for places like Iraq, and even a blue coloration for OPFOR units intended for training purposes. The DPM pattern itself was a huge part of British military culture. The kit became associated with iconic conflicts like the Falklands War, and just in general, people really liked it. That is until Afghanistan in 2009.
What happened in Afghanistan? What's going on over there?
Picture this. You're a British soldier in 2009 on patrol through the Helmand province. Your patrol route takes you through several different environments, including small villages, sandy, rocky areas, and even lush green environments. The entire time you're wearing one of two camouflage uniforms, or even both at the same time, and neither of them are particularly good. Neither woodland or desert DPM worked well at all in this environment, and the Taliban were finding it very easy to spot and then pick off British soldiers, leading to higher casualties. Stop clapping. If you're gonna clap, do it with your cheeks. Some stopgap solutions like dyeing uniforms to better blend in the Helmand green zone were tried, but before long, urgent requests for a new camouflage entirely were being passed up the chain of command. Around this same time, a Royal Engineer Lieutenant Colonel named Matthew Tressiter had been made Chief of Staff at the Defense Clothing Team. Before his arrival, a project known as Peacock had been started to not only develop new camouflages, but also new uniforms and pieces of kit like plate carriers. But unfortunately, the Peacock project had its funding cut, was deemed a failure, and put on the back burner. This being said though, Tressiter continued to receive requests from frontline soldiers in Afghanistan for a new camouflage and began a new project. To start this project off, they created a photo survey using images of Afghanistan's terrain alongside the Defense Science and Technology labs. With this data, they created several different new camouflages to compare against the old desert and woodland DPM. The exact details of how MultiCam had its hat thrown in the ring for these trials is a little bit fuzzy, but it's thought that this was because UK Special Forces had actually began wearing it by this time. To streamline the actual testing process and eliminate as many variables as possible, the DSTL created a computer program to determine which patterns were most effective in which environments. In the past, camouflage testing was often done by having several dudes dress up in different uniforms and then stand in front of various terrain features, seeing which one of them was spotted first. But this approach was pretty unscientific and was prone to human bias, as well as not eliminating factors such as shadow or sunlight. Instead of using this outdated method, Tressiter and his team decided to use a computer program that overlaid a picture of the camouflage they were trying to test over different environments, and then that computer program would track how long it took the human eye to recognize and see that camouflage jacket. These times varied all the way from less than 1 second all the way up to 30 seconds, with the latter being regarded as basically invisible. If there's one camouflage pattern that you think it would take less than 1 second to spot, tell us in the comments. Probably UCP if I'm gonna be honest. Cry's MultiCam performed the best in the widest range of environments, being tested alongside a dozen or so in-house new designs and the two current issue DPM patterns. It should be noted though that both woodland and desert DPM performed the best in their respective intended environments, but dropped to performing the worst in environments that they were not intended to be worn in. The scientific testing portion of the camouflage trial was pretty much over at that point, but one big question remained unanswered. What did the British soldier think? In the summer of 2010, a sort of fashion show was organized at a military base called Warminster in the UK. 10 soldiers were chosen to model the top 10 camouflage patterns that were discovered during the trial in front of a crowd of about 200 personnel from the Royal Air Force, Royal Marines, and the Army. These people ranged in rank from junior soldiers to senior NCOs. This test will determine which of the camo patterns is the most allied, the most drippy, the most swagged out, if you will. Hold up, I got a quote from Matthew Tressiter talking about this. He says,
If these guys have to wear the camouflage, they have to have confidence in it. They have to feel they look good in it.
The breakdown is actually pretty interesting. Naturally, older NCOs and longer serving members favored the current issue patterns and new patterns that more resembled DPM. There were some digital patterns in the mix as well, and while Tressiter and senior British military officials expected these to be the most popular, they were actually universally hated. Good, they look like shit. The winner of this camouflage beauty contest ended up being a MultiCam DPM hybrid developed by Cry Precision. Tressiter named the pattern MultiTerrain Pattern, or MTP, very conveniently making it match his initials so that Matthew Tressiter pattern could be an inside joke for the development team. Better yet, Caleb Cry actually informed Tressiter that he had added the initials MT to the pattern right before the production run. After this test, the MTP pattern was officially adopted, and by December, the very first uniforms were rolled out to British troops deployed to Afghanistan, who were absolutely thrilled to have something that blended better in this specific environment.
I'm absolutely chuffed, bruv.
At first, there aren't enough uniforms to go around, but as the deliveries continue and everybody starts wearing MTP, it becomes very clear that it performs much better than either DPM did in the Helmand province. Intercepted messages from a Taliban commander asking a subordinate about why kill rates against British forces have fallen gives us a clear indication of MTP's success.
Well, since they changed their camouflage, we can't see them anymore.
That's more or less the story of the development and adoption of British MTP, but I still have a couple questions, and I imagine you're asking some as well. Was it worth it to change the entire British military standard issue camouflage just to fit a niche environment like the Green Zone in Helmand? And in the future, will woodland patterns like DPM make a comeback now that the British military and NATO as a whole are focusing more on a land war in Europe rather than fighting in semi-arid environments like Afghanistan? Or is MTP considered effective enough to blend well into environments like Latvia or Estonia, where in the future, British soldiers might find themselves facing a Russian invasion? Hopefully we'll never have to find out, but it's a good question to ask. Anyway, that'll do it for the first episode of our camo history video, and as always, if you want some military surplus, specifically MTP, visit AmericanaPipeDream.com. We've pretty much always got something like that in stock. If you liked the video, leave a like, comment your thoughts down below, and subscribe to the AP YouTube channel.